Welcome to the Me and Money podcast, where your hosts and certified financial planners, Matt Fizell and Elliott Appel, share their thoughts on hot topics, important concepts, and real-life stories in personal finance. Hear from Matt and Elliott as they share lessons learned in their own financial journeys and those they've witnessed throughout their careers while helping clients. Have a question you'd like to hear discussed on a future episode of the podcast? You can reach out to Matt or Elliott or drop your question at the link listed in the show notes. Before we get to the episode, we'd like to remind you that while both Matt and Elliott are financial planners, they are not your financial planner, and this podcast is only intended for educational purposes. For full disclosures, please be sure to listen to the end of the episode or check out the show notes on your favorite podcast platform. Now, on to the show with your hosts, Matt Fizell and Elliott Appel.
Welcome back to another episode of the Me and Money podcast. Last week we talked about what happens if I'm behind, or I feel behind. But this week we're going to talk about what if someone you love, maybe your parents, what if they really are behind and have not saved enough money for retirement? I feel like this is kind of a millennial, maybe like some Gen X, Y, maybe, but I feel like it's really going to be a problem for millennials and beyond. So
sandwich generation, I think, is what everybody's referring it to, right? Where you're taking care of your parents and your kids.
Yeah, but are we the sandwich generation? I think
it's a little bit older than us at the moment,
okay.
But I think it will also be us at some point.
All right. So not so tasty sandwich. That's the episode name for sure. Where do you want to start with this one, Elliott?
Oh man. I just as you were saying that, my laughing was like, what if your parents messed up? What if they didn't say? And I think it's worth starting this conversation that you and I are going to approach this in our own ways. I also think it's worthwhile to say that culturally, I know different cultures have different approaches to this.
That's good.
Right?
Good
in terms
disclaimer.
of do you take care of your parents or not? And what sort of boundaries or expectations are you setting? I have my own personal beliefs and opinions and things that I lived through with my dad. I'm sure, Matt, you have your own. And if we go ask a random stranger, they're going to have that. So take everything we say with a grain of salt. That's where I want to start with today's conversation.
I love it. The most roundabout way to disclaim before we get into it.
Yeah.
I would agree. Okay. So now that we've made the disclaimer, if I were just to say, okay, Elliott, you're going to need to, your parents haven't saved enough money. There's a reality that you may have to help them in their retirement. Where do you take that? Where do you start? What questions are you asking yourself?
I'm probably not asking. Well, maybe I am asking myself. I think one, if you're married, you have to get on the same page, right? Are your in-laws moving in with you? Is everybody going to survive, or is someone going to murder each other? Right? Let's take extreme examples here, just sort of comically, but not. What's reasonable? So get on the same page with whoever's impacted. If there's children in the family and they're of an age where you can have that conversation, what are you willing to support? If that's terms of free cash flow, if that's rent, if that's a mother-in-law unit, whatever that is, I think that's really important to get on the same page, because if you and your spouse aren't agreeing, the rest of the conversations are kind of a moot point and aren't going to go anywhere. But I think once you do that, having a very honest conversation with your parent, and I have a very strong opinion that if parents are not willing to discuss this with you and they come back later after you've tried to have that conversation, it's not on you to make up for their shortcomings, right? That may sound cruel to some people, whether that's just your personal beliefs or whatever, but I think this is a situation where they're creating the issue via their own actions. It's not on you to then save them from that, particularly if you've tried to have the conversation early, right? If someone comes and says, hey, I can't afford my rent, I need $3,000 in the next 3 days. Is that a reasonable request? And AARP has a good article about caregiving, because I think a lot of this goes hand in hand of you get to set the boundaries. And if people go over those boundaries, it is trespassing. And I think when you put it in that regard, right? Someone comes onto my property and they were not invited, they are trespassing. The same way that if people make unreasonable requests of you, I consider that a form of trespassing. I think that's a good way to put it, as opposed to like, oh, they're family. Like you just do that sort of thing. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm gonna sum up what you said with the word boundaries.
Yep.
There's some really good books out there about boundaries. I think like even in marriage or with friends or certainly with family, like there's a lot of ignorance around what those boundaries should look like, and I think that creates a lot more problems than it needs to. I think if people are just straight up about where the boundaries lie, and it's not always going to be a fun conversation. It's probably never going to be a fun conversation. But I think boundaries are really, really helpful in this. I'm also going to, I take a slightly less direct approach than you. I think things happen to people. Look, mistakes happen.
Yeah.
Life circumstances usually aren't always in our favor. But I think there has to be like radical transparency to the point where if this were me entering that conversation, I'd say like, okay, like I need to see like what's going on. Like maybe that's my spreadsheet financial planner brain hijacking the conversation right now, but I'd really like to know, where's the money going? Like, what is the real root problem here? Is it you lost your job, you had a big medical bill, you're blowing it all at the casino? Very different approaches to all those circumstances, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, like, and I learned this the hard way. Like I did loan family money at one point, and I really regret. That's one of the few like financial regrets I ever have. It created a lot of tension, a lot of like they were beholden to that debt kind of a feeling, and I wish I would have just given the money. Like, and so I think my piece of wisdom here is, if you're going to help them, like, don't loan it, don't lend it, like, just be ready to part ways with that money, because it's going to create way more animosity down the road. And I think you can kind of view this as like a form of gambling. Like maybe the first time you help them, like you're just kind of going to the casino and maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. Or you can set some boundaries and have transparency and say, look, I'm willing to help you if these things change. And if they don't, I'm not going to help you anymore. You know, like that's probably where I would start.
I think that's a really good point, Matt, because if you, like, let's go extreme example and say someone has $80,000 worth of credit card debt at 20% or 25%. What are the odds that anything that you do is going to allow them to pay that off, right? If you're on a trajectory of bankruptcy and you're now giving them money and they just apply it to the credit card, is that helping anything? Right. And that's where I think that radical transparency and trying to figure out where are things going, what's the situation, what's the most likely outcome, or they're on a plan to spend down to Medicaid for nursing care or something like that. How are your funds actually being applied, and is it actually helping anybody, or is it more or less just lighting money on fire and that's it?
Yeah. And I think too, like, that may be the solution. Like, they have to be, if they're not open to bankruptcy, like I probably have even more issue like trying to help, because that just, again, I know it's a really like societal like tough thing to work through, like, and to say you went bankrupt is humiliating, and there's a lot of emotional consequences that come with that. But at the same time, like it's really not a bad deal when you think about it. Like, yeah, you're not going to be able to get a house, you're not going to be able to get a car, but you probably shouldn't have those things if you can't manage your money properly, right? Like, those are usually where a lot of people go wrong. So yeah, no, I think that's great. What you
and
said.
that's an extreme example, right? I've also seen examples of like, hey, my parent needs $500 a month to supplement their Social Security, and I think that's where that conversation can be really helpful. Of with you and your spouse, hey, is this something that we can afford? How does this impact us? Are we okay with that? And what is the conversation with our parents to say, okay, we're willing to do this. We'll make an inflation adjustment. We'll do it for the rest of our lives. We'll do it for 10 years. We'll do it for whatever time period, right? And that's just something, hey, we're comfortable doing. So I think it all comes back to that conversation and setting those expectations and those boundaries of this is what we're willing to do, but also recognizing the boundaries might need to change if life changes. And I think that's an important part of the conversation. That could be to the positive, it could be to the negative, right? If you get a higher paying job and you're like, hey, we can afford more, great, then we can support that. I think that's good to keep in mind. But I think it comes back to that conversation.
100%. And I think, I just think where a lot of this goes wrong is like, what created the problem, right? Like, was it something outside of their control? Was it something that they've been doing habitually for decades? Like, two very different conversations, in my opinion. But if they're not willing to share that, like, I think it's going to be an uphill battle in helping them, because there's going to be this just like, you're putting fog into the equation at the start, and it's probably not going to go well, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, unless you're just willing to accept, hey, I'm willing to give this person X number of dollars once.
Yeah.
And it is what it is, and they can do with it. Like, I think there's also some power in that, and kudos to those people who can do it. Of, hey, I'm just willing to part with that to help this person out, and I don't want to get involved at all. Yep. I think there's something to be said. Like, nothing wrong with that either. You get to set the boundaries.
But throwing money at the problem usually does not solve the problem. That's just historically. But yes, that goes back to my gambling thing. Like, if you want to just gamble a few $1,000s and you can afford to lose it, like, whatever. Like, it's probably okay to do it once at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get, I like some of your other angles to this though. Like, what about like how do you navigate that if they just straight up can't retire? And I think this can get really messy with, oh, well, mom and dad paid for my college. Like, now I feel like I owe them. Like, that's not a bad feeling, but how do we look at that? I know how I would start with that, but I want to hear your thoughts first.
I would just name the feeling of like, what's happening? Do I actually owe them something? Like, was that contingent? And what do you feel good about doing? Right? If it's, and there's no right or wrong answer here from my perspective, right? You could decide, hey, I want to pay back the tuition. I want to pay back the tuition plus interest. I'm not going to pay back anything. That was a gift. They shouldn't expect it in return. Or, hey, I'm willing to help them with more than that. Again, it's what, at the end of the day, you have to live with your action, right? If your parents die the next day or 10 years from now and they're in a certain circumstance and you could have helped and chose not to or didn't want to or whatever, right? Like, how does that make you feel? And everybody's decision is totally different, and it's based on the relationship too with the parent, I would say.
Yeah. I love it. What do you think? It's just a big old bag of nuance, huh?
Yeah. I think it's one of those things, like if there was ever a personal finance question that is ultra personal, and like, I couldn't tell you what most people do, because I don't think there is a most people. I've seen so many people approach this conversation and this decision totally different. And I've seen people do the same exact things and have opposite reactions to it, right? We've had people help who loved it, people who helped who hated it. And on the other side of it, right? Didn't help, loved it, didn't help, hated it, and everything in between.
Yeah. So I'm going to share, like, this is how, if you're listening to this and like you're in this situation, like, I would ask your parents what their parents did for them, because and I always ask this question in my discovery meetings before I ever work with someone, like, tell me more about like what money was growing up. And then from there, I can see, are they going the same direction as their parents, or are they going the opposite direction? And that will tell you a lot about like where your values lie and maybe how that experience was growing up and how you view that. Because if you're swinging back the opposite way, I think this is going to be a lot harder for you to help. And if you're swinging towards your parents, I think it's going to be a lot harder for you to say no.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Right? Because if you're mirroring the behavior, you're probably going to be more inclined to do what your parents did for you. Right?
Yeah.
And if you're going against it, you're probably going to be a little bit more skeptical or have some hesitation in helping.
let's put let's make this a little more tangible then,
Sure.
right? Let's say your parents, let's generalize and just say your parents weren't great with money growing up. There wasn't a lot to go around. Maybe didn't save or invest for whatever reason. Not going to put any blame or any fault or anything, like just didn't happen, right?
Yep.
And then you grow up and you're like, hey, I didn't love that experience. I'm going to go find a higher paying job or whatever, set up habits. I'm going to save, invest. That person's going to maybe be a little more challenged to help their parents out.
I think so.
Okay. I just want to make it a little more tangible.
I am generalizing, but
sure.
It's just you're going to be taking very different actions with your money. And I think that's where, like, the way you describe that, that's me. Like, I am very much different from how my parents approached their finances. And it is challenging because it's like, well, I want to understand more, right? Like, what's going on. But yeah, so I think just like tuning into that and understanding like how their parents helped them or what that relationship was like, it will help you maybe understand what some of their expectations may be, because if they did for you what their parents did for them, they may think, well, now, the kids are going to do what we did for mom and dad, so that's kind of where I'm going with that. It just might help diffuse some of the intense emotions that can come from these conversations. And where I'm going with that too is, we talk a lot. I know you don't work with a ton of young parents, but is helping your kids with college, for example, better than saddling them with helping you retire? Like, I don't know if I don't think any parent wants to put that on their kids, but I think especially if you're a young family or you're married, like, you have to ask yourselves, like, do we want to put ourselves in jeopardy to help mom and dad, only then to have the next generation kind of have to do the same thing for us? And you kind of make this chain of perpetual help. And most everyone here has probably flown on a plane before, right? Like, there's a reason they tell you to put your oxygen mask on first. And if you're having any real financial concerns or doubts, and it's not just like, oh, like, we have so much money, we're not worried about it, take $10,000 or whatever. I really do think like you need to work with a financial planner, like, and make sure that your own oxygen mask is on first, and understand what the calculated number is to freely go do that, so that it doesn't create animosity if they go and blow the money, or if it means that you have to work a job that maybe you don't love, or you're not going to be able to afford to pay for your own kids' college, and that matters more to you than helping your parents. So I think that's where it gets really messy, right? And that's where I agree with you. Like, I don't think there is a right answer to this equation, because some people may not want to pay for their whole kid's education, and because they have that value, they most certainly can help their parents. Like, and then it's really not a tense situation at all. But if you don't know how all those variables are interacting with what you want to do, it gets really stressful really fast.
Yeah. And you hit on a point of like figuring out the values. I think that's a really important piece of this, and values might change over time. But again, I think just going back to that conversation of what's expected, and not everybody's waking up one day like, oh, I thought I was supporting a family of 2 or 4, and now it's a family of 6, right? There's finite resources for all of us. Most of us don't have the ability to support infinite family members. And so trying to decide, where do my values lie and who am I going to support, and during what stages of life, right? You hit on like saving for college. Well, if I'm paying for my kids to go to college at the moment, maybe I'm cash flowing some of that out of pocket. That might be a different conversation of 10 years earlier or 10 years later in terms of the ability to help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think timing has a lot to do with this as well.
Yeah. And that's the tough thing too. Like, we never know what the next generation's values are going to be, right? And that's where I have seen those conversations where it's like, look, like, we helped, like, grandpa and grandma helped out with our college, and now we have to help them. Like, so now too do you. Like, and I think too, like, you have to find a roundabout way to actually get what their expectations are, because they're probably not going to flat out tell you, like, we expect you to do this, like, unless it's really a dire situation. And I think that's where the unspoken expectations create a lot of the issues, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And that's where, oh, you gave us 5,000, but we were expecting 10, like, because that's what someone else, I don't know. That's just kind of where my head
Or we
goes.
expected to move in with you at a certain age, but
right,
you're not, right? Like,
yeah,
it doesn't have to be necessarily financially either.
Yeah. So that being said, though, I think this can be like, it can really help strengthen bonds in families if it goes well and properly and is correctly outlined and not like just rushed into. I don't know. What else would you say on this one? It's a really tough one because like there is a lot of nuance, and I hope we're not just rambling. I hope someone took something away from this. It's a sticky one.
It is a sticky one. I might just add, like, if you're struggling with these conversations, I think there's two main ways to approach this. And maybe, Matt, you have a different perspective. But I think there is one, the blunt way of being very honest and forthcoming of, I have talked to my spouse. We are planning for you aging and or being financially, like, we don't know where you sit financially. Here's what we have discussed. Are you willing to be open with us about your financial situation? Because we'd like to help in XYZ way, but here's what we want to avoid. I think and again, I know not every family is going to respond to that, right? My dad, when he was alive, there's no way he would have responded to that. But I think that there is something to be said as you look at your own values and clearly communicating and articulating what you're willing to do. I think there's real power behind that, because at the end of the day, if I clearly do that and feel like I did a good job, if they come to me later, I feel like I did my part personally. Mm-hmm. I know everybody, it's not going to make the situation any easier or less sticky or less messy, but at least you can point and go, hey, do you remember when we had that conversation? I tried to do that. Right? Like, I wish this had turned out differently. We're going to start now, but that's what I need now. Right? Like, I think that's really helpful. Or there's the sort of trickle approach of, hey, I did my own planning here. What are your plans for this? Right? Like, we've talked, if something happened to so-and-so, we would go here, or we would Asian place, or like, I did my own estate planning. Here's what it looks like. I always like to borrow that. Or I read an article, and just trickle those conversations in over the years as you sort of uncover whatever the painting is that we're trying to create here. Again, I don't think there's a right or a wrong way. I think most people go under the trickle approach, but the trickle approach also means sometimes like you unveil part of the painting, but never clearly get all the way through it before something happens, in my experience.
Right. Well, and I think too, like the trickle method, if you're like a passive person, like that may not be the best route for you, because you're never going to get to the point that you need to. It's gonna be like, oh, well, they did mention, they're getting old, but they didn't say anything else. So I'm just going to wait till next time, or I'm going to wait. And I loved your example though, with the estate plan. Like, this is another really good, even if you're not going to be caring for them, like you may want to know what they're assigning you to do upon their death, and make sure, like, and that's the funny thing too. Like, if they even have the documents is one thing. And then secondly, like, is it going to be this mountain of work for you to do? And maybe you have more kids than your brother or sister, and they would be better able to handle it, but the documents say you, like, and your brother or sister aren't in the documents for no good reason. Like, so I think that's a good thing. Like, and it is hard to have those conversations. They're super awkward. Not to scare people away from them, but I think it kind of goes back to what we were saying last episode with the budget. Like, you'll feel a lot better once you do.
Doing something's usually better than nothing.
Yeah.
In those contexts.
But also don't go in there like guns blazing, like demanding, the 200-page financial plan and understanding every little detail, Yeah. Definitely a lot of middle ground.
You got to build on it, just like you would any relationship.
Yeah. So, okay, so let's summarize action points. So if you're going to summarize like what listeners can do as a map to start this process, if they are in the situation or not.
Get your own financial plan in order and talk to your spouse about what are, like, if there's excess resources or resources to be shared, what are you both comfortable with? I think that's step one for me.
I love it. I'll roll with that. What's next?
Then I think it's a conversation/values thing of how do I sneak this into, or be blunt in the conversation with my parent or loved one or whoever this is we're talking about, of like, what are they expecting and what kind of situation are they in? And I always go back to like, I've done my own planning, or I read about XYZ. Talk about it from a broad perspective with your parent or your loved one, right? Like, hey, we're trying to get to X number of savings by the time we're blah, blah. Like, how did you approach that? Maybe you learned something. Maybe you don't.
Yeah.
But I think, and then coming back to it, right? If the first conversation doesn't go well, okay, there'll be another one in the future. Don't give up. Certain things happen in life where people are more willing to come to the table to talk.
Yeah. All right. I love it. What
do you
next?
think?
No, I think that's great. I think like even just asking like if maybe they're already retired, or maybe they're thinking about retiring soon, like just asking them like, what does your retirement, like what do you want your retirement to look like? Like, I mean, that sounds like a financial planner question, but you might be able to understand like where some of their I guess hesitation is around their finances, like without deliberately asking like, are you gonna run out of money?
How much
like,
money do you have?
But you might be able to like feel out some of those things, and then if they're like, well, like I don't even know if I should retire, like I'm worried about this, like then you could just kind of dig into those addressable and now open concerns that they have and see if that conversation goes anywhere. Like I always go back to, we learned this at FPA residency, which is like where you just learn to talk to clients basically. But the concept of rivers and streams, like what little questions can you ask that will get you closer to the big questions that you have? And can you ride those streams into the bigger conversation that you want to have? And just start with something small, like asking your mom or dad about what they want to do in retirement and how they feel about their retirement is a heck of a lot easier than asking like, hey, am I going to have to like have you move in when you're 90? Like what's your plan for the nursing home? Like those are big, scary questions. So
for sure,
start small.
I would also add to, like, after you get all those conversations, if you decide that you are going to support your parent or loved one or whoever, mentally, I like accounting for that in a different account. So if you're saving a specific account, whether it's brokerage account, a savings account, whatever it is, having that bucket so that way it's clearly delineated. This is what we're willing to put aside. It's not to say that you can't go outside of the bounds of that, but I've found personally and in families that I've worked with, having that separate account allows them to clearly say, like, this is what's available and we're not going above it if they want.
Yeah. And then I think I would just wrap it up with saying, like, don't sign yourself up for forever. Like this, just like anything in life, like there's going to be different seasons of it, like supporting them today, like saying, hey, mom and dad, we're going to support you. Like that could mean something very different 10 or 15 years from now. And don't put yourself on the hook for something that we don't even know what it's going to be. Like, what if 5 years in they go into full blown memory care and it's like $80,000 or $90,000 a year? Like, that's a very different thing. Yeah. I was trying to be like, I think that's still going to scare people, Elliott. For those of you listening, he just was motioning more money, Matt, more money. But I think just take it slow and don't overpromise and put yourself in a stressful position for overpromising. You can always it's a lot easier to do more than to do less.
Yeah.
Once you've started.
I think, yeah. Revisit boundaries.
Yeah. Boundaries. Read books on boundaries. All right, Elliott. Anything else you'd want to leave them with today?
Boundaries is a perfect place to wrap.
All right. So we're going to put the boundary on this episode and call it a day. I'll see you next time.
Sounds good.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Me and Money podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Have a question you'd like to suggest for a future episode? drop Matt or Elliott a question at their email, or use the linked form in the show notes. Like what you heard? It would be a tremendous help to us in our mission of having real conversations about personal finance by leaving us a review on your favorite podcast app. A few words can go a long way in connecting those looking for content like ours on their app of choice. You can also support the show by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Thanks again for listening, and be on the lookout for future episodes soon.
The Me and Money podcast is hosted and produced by Harmony Outsourcing Services LLC. Matt Fizell is an investment advisor representative of Harmony Wealth L.L.C. Elliott Appel is an investment advisor representative of Kindness Financial Planning LLC. However, the views and opinions expressed by Matt and Elliott in this podcast are not intended as individualized investment advice on behalf of Harmony or Kindness, or as tax, accounting, or legal advice. Although we gather information from sources that we deem to be reliable, we cannot guarantee the accuracy, timeliness, or completeness of any information prepared by any unaffiliated third party. When specific investments or types of investments are mentioned, such mention is not intended to be a recommendation or endorsement to buy or sell the specific investment. Harmony is a registered investment advisor authorized to do business in the states of Wisconsin and Texas and other jurisdictions where exempted. Kindness is a registered investment advisor authorized to do business in Wisconsin and Washington and in other jurisdictions where exempted. Registration as a registered investment advisor does not imply a certain level of skill or training. This website contains links to the Harmony and Kindness websites that provide general information about the advisory services offered by Harmony and Kindness. These links are provided as a convenience only. Harmony and Kindness can only provide individualized services after you sign an agreement and receive required disclosures. Users of this website may, but are not required to, engage the services of Harmony or Kindness for advisory services. Please remember that all investments involve varying degrees of risk, and the future performance of any specific investment or investment strategy is not guaranteed to be profitable or equal to any historical performances. As a final note, we'd encourage you to reach out to your financial professionals before implementing any of the strategies or concepts discussed in this podcast. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.